So I am so pleased to welcome my good friend and life mentor on how to really show up, Rebecca Folsom. She has such a wonderful, creative, loving spirit, and she brings all that together in her music. And she has agreed to be the official launch of Boulder Builds Peace Week. Even though we've already had two activities, one at the Jaipur Literature Festival, a workshop on communication skills, and also an event at Naropa on conversations about how to talk across differences. And so today, with the official launch with Rebecca Folsom, and so please welcome her here.
All right. Thank you. Boulder Builds Peace. What a beautiful thing. We're going to start off with a song called Sanctuary that is about every voice matters. One voice rising in the darkness, one voice no matter how small, and one voice each of us together becomes the one voice of us all. One voice, one world, one choice, love. Show us how we can make a sanctuary, a safe refuge, a higher ground. One people living in one world, each act of love. Show us how. In one world we are brothers and sisters. One world, it's really rather small. One world, ours to care for. One world together, a sanctuary for all. And one voice, one world, one choice, love. Show us how we can make a sanctuary, a safe refuge, a higher ground. One people living in one world, each Thank you. Thank you. That song is off the Sanctuary CD. And the Sanctuary CD we created last year after doing outreach programs with undervoiced people that are marginalized and kind of pushed their stories and their voices a little pushed to the side in our culture and our society. And so I got this idea to bring their voices to the mainstream and try and get them on the radio and get them in some mainstream places. And so we did workshops with veterans and with refugee teens and kids and elders and people that were experiencing homelessness. And we put all those songs, we took their voices, created beautiful songs, and put them on the Sanctuary CD. And we actually then put it out into the world. And, you never know as an artist how that's going to go. Like, are people going to like that music? And I thought, particularly, this is intense music, beautiful music and intense music. And it went to #1 on the National Folk Americana radio charts. So we were like, yahoo! So apparently people do want to hear these messages, which is a wonderful thing. And as a gift for your coming forward for peace, I am offering those CDs for free to you today. So they're on the table and over where the check-in is. And there's also a Shine CD that's more of a kick up your heels, Austin, Texas thing. So both of those are for you. All right, we're going to do one of those songs off the CD. This is one we wrote with prisoners that had felt very put away, and that they still wanted to make something beautiful of their lives, and the community and the prisons they wanted to make better. So this is called Brothers. Brother, brother, brothers, we are not alone. Rub the stain from barbed wire fences. You push the stones out to reveal. We unbury the ache inside, the sorrows and secrets we hide, so we can finally heal. Then the light of love comes calling to our weary, broken hearts, relaxing fists and softening eyes, and it lifts us up, it helps us rise. Oh, brother, brother, brothers, we are not alone. Can we listen to each other? Let understanding be the way that leads to brighter days. Let loving be the key that sets us free. I'll drop the labels, you'll shed old stories. We'll repair the damage that's been done. Losing fear and pride, humble and dignified, we'll raise from this wreckage a new home. And we are capable of so much beauty, so much to realize. Can we reach out to each other, know our brothers, and make a better life? Oh, brother, brother, brothers, we are not alone. Can we listen to each other? Let understanding be the way that leads to brighter days. Let love and be the key that sets us free. Love is the opening door. Love is what we came here for. No one could offer you more. Do you know what I read? Have your eyes really seen? Thank you. What an incredible experience that was to go into the state prison and work with the guys. And we ended up, I don't know how it happened, it was kind of a miracle because it's really hard to get into the prison and do things. And we went and did the workshops, we took their stories, came back, Mark Oblinger and I wrote the song. And we came back and said, we want you to add something to it. And they stood around and we had microphones. I brought in my recording gear and we had them rap over the song. And it was pretty incredible what happened. And I have to say that one of the quietest guys in the group, these other guys are rapping, they're really great, they're doing a great job. And I said, don't you have something you want to share with the world? And he said, well, they're all really good, and I don't have anything to say. And I said, surely you have something to say. And he came forward on the microphone, and he said, my life is not a waste. And every guy then walked up and said, my life is not a waste, my life is not a waste. And I'm goosebumping. It just was such a moment that the quietest voice was so impactful in that. So, all right, this is a new song. This is called The Calling. Thank you all for coming out, and here we go. Words Thank you. That's a brand new one. Woo. All right, we got a little one called Walls for you. And you know, you never know with a new song. You're like, is it working? You were just trying to fly with a brand new little bird on that. It worked? Awesome. We all hit the same notes together. That was good. All right, here's Walls. I wrote this with Dana Cooper out of Nashville, Tennessee. Walls hold things up, they keep us in our place. They're square, they're there for what we can't face. Our walls keep us safe. Our walls keep us safe. Walls keep us from straying too far from our beliefs. They reject, they protect, they help us stay asleep. Walls silence the questions that lie beneath. I built a wall, hard and high. Then I heard voices singing on the other side. I risked the fall, climbed up to see that the people on the other side, they're just like me. Slow down, soften for a while, turn towards each other and open up and smile aloud yourself to listen to the other and walk a mile, walk a mile, walk a mile. Walls are built to crumble, walls are bound to fall. They lean, they mean to separate us all. No wall can defeat us, no matter how tall. We build our walls with wrong and right, piling up each judgment and blocking out the light. When my fear falls, I clearly see that the people on the other side, they're just like me. Slow down, soften for a while, turn towards each other and open up and smile aloud yourself to look into the other and walk a mile, 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 walk a mile. Thank you, thank you. I want to thank the Boulder Rotary for being so incredible, hosting this event, putting this together, and in alliance with Cinda Collins doing her beautiful work. So I'd like to give it up for everyone in the Boulder Rotary. Cinda, what a beautiful thing. I'm a Boulder girl. I was born here, born and raised, and I do a lot of traveling around. And I just got back from Europe, a tour out there. And I was in Istanbul. And anybody here been to Istanbul? What a town. I mean, it's a city. It's as big as New York City. It's big. But talk about people living together, mosques and churches right next to cats and dogs living together. It's a pretty powerful experience to watch that whole rich environment of many, many different kinds living together. All right, taking down our walls with each other. So this is just, you're going to know this. You want to sing along, that'd be great. All right. So we would like to ask for a little audience participation on this next song. This is not a sing-along. It is a yell-along. So if you were told you could not sing, this is your turn. This is called Wild Women. I wrote this with Hazel Miller and Mary Huckins of Dakota Blonde. And we wrote it for a benefit we were doing at the Boulder Theater and for abused kids. And it's about the power of women. And I think we are certainly in a time of that, aren't we? The power of women. So here's Wild Women for you. So all you got to do is yell wild women, wild women, wild women when I give you the cue. You good with that? Okay, it's good for you. Like, let your voice out. It's a nice space, lots of room. Okay. Let me tell you a story about some women I know. They'll tell you so. They can take just nothing and make it into something good, and something into nothing if it ain't doing what it should. Ain't hanging around for no one to tell us what to do. Wild women, wild women, wild women. Never, 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 never get the blues. You know this world can be full of lies and sin. You've never been hit so hard you can't get up again. Now listen to that spark of truth that lives inside your soul that leads you to the healing that will make you whole. We're all in this together. Come on and grab hold. Wild women, wild women, wild women. Never, 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 never get the blues. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nobody got the right to push you around. Nobody got the right to try and hold you down. Nobody got the right to hit and abuse. We are women of heart and soul. Lord, we paid our dues. Mr. Tom Wazinger. Sandra Wong. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nobody got the right to push you around, not even yourself. Nobody got the right to try and hold you down. Nobody got the right to hit and abuse. We are women of heart and soul. Lord, we paid our dues. Wild women, wild women, wild women. Never, 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 no, we never, no, we never. We never get the blues. Okay. I think we got time for two more? Okay, great. I think we'll just jump to Wonder. Is that okay? All right. This is a song that, what do I want to say about this song? Mostly I want to say that the power, this song is called Wonder. And I got so excited about this song that now we've just created some new merchandise, and they're Wonder t-shirts and Love t-shirts and little Wonder hats, little caps that say Wonder. So you, instead of putting on your thinking cap, you can put on your Wonder hat. So we are going to, those will be coming out soon. They'll be, like, if you go to my website, it will be launching that. I just wanted to say, too, that there are many, many things coming up here in the Boulder Builds Peace Week. Of course, right next is John, who's going to come up and share his beautiful wisdom with us, which would be great. And then we have events like through the weekend. I know Ars Nova is going to be playing, and you've got the Peace. Fair, thank you. The Peace Fair is on your table. You can also go to the boulderrotary.org and check out everything that's going to be happening. There's something on Thursday next week, too. So what a thing to build momentum towards is Boulder aligning with peace. And I can't think of it anywhere else I'd rather be than right here, right now, kicking this off. So we're going to sing a little song about wonder, because sometimes in the midst of some of the shadows and the things going on, it's a little like, whoa, what do we do with this, you know? And we can get discouraged and be over and like, it'll never work. Or we can go into, wow, I wonder what solutions we haven't thought of yet. I wonder what I could do here. I wonder how I can make a tiny little difference and be a drop in the ocean. And so I love this Wonder song. It was inspired from swimming with 30 wild dolphins in Ho'okana Bay in Hawaii. I swam with them just by chance and then by myself in this bay. And then I walked out on the beach and wrote this whole song. So I always figured it's from them to the humans. You have dreams, what you love to do, but something holds you back from making them come true. Fear and worry about what comes your way, or you can open up your arms and smile and say, come what may. Why worry when you can wonder? Why worry when you can wonder? Up your eyes. Oh, I forgot to tell you, it's a sing-along. And wonder. That's your part. Wonder. I know it's early, but you can do it. Wonder. There is magic all around you. Lighten up your heart, let that spirit move. Then it happens, a brilliant living flow, and it's taken us places we can only dream to know. Come on, let's go. Why worry when think about when you were told to keep your voice down and go the other direction. Raise your voice for peace. Yes, I wonder why we choose fear when we can choose love anytime. Take it home now. Thank you. We got one last song to send you into John's beautiful talk. And I want to thank Dan and Tyler and everyone on the sound crew doing such a beautiful job. So thank you. They make us look good or they make us not look good. So we always appreciate them. And I want to thank these two beautiful human beings who, you know, I've done this long enough that I only tour with people that I adore. And I adore these two. This is Mr. Tom Wassinger, 3-time Grammy-winning producer over here on my right. And Sandra Wong, playing the world, inspiring everywhere. What a talent. Please, Sandra Wong. I'm Rebecca Folsom, and if we haven't met before, I look forward to meeting you. Please do pick up your CDs, your free CDs for you, and go on to the website, and we'll tell you where we're playing. All right, here's a little Andy Grammer song that is just so great. It's just one of those of like, don't give up, keep going forward with the beautiful stuff you're sharing with the world. Thank you, Boulder Rotary, too. I've been grinding so long, been doing this for years. I got little to show this time, this rope right here. There's a man upstairs, he keep bringing me more rain. But I've been sending up prayers, something has changed. I think I finally found my hallelujah. I've been waiting for this moment all my life. Now all my dreams are coming true, yeah. I've been waiting for this moment. Good to be alive right about now. Good to be alive right about now. Good to be alive right about now. Hallelujah, let that bassline booyah say yeah. Good to be alive right about now. I was dead in the water, nobody wanted me. I was old news, I went cold as cold could be. But I kept throwing on coal to get that fire to burn. Sometimes you gotta get tough to get what you deserve. I'm moving on, I'm moving up. Lord, I'm feeling blessed with so much love. I think I finally found my hallelujah. I've been waiting for this moment all my life. Now all my dreams are coming true, yeah. I've been waiting for this moment. Good to be alive right about now. Good to be alive right about now. Good to be alive right about now. Hallelujah, let that bassline booyah say yeah. Good to be alive right about now. I almost can I handle it? I could get used to this. I almost can I right about now. Uh-huh. Good, good, good. Good to be alive right about now. Good, good, good. Good to be alive right about now. Hallelujah. Let that bass hallelujah say yeah. Good to be alive right about now. Uh-huh. Thank you so much, Sandra Wong, Tom Wassinger. I'm Rebecca Folsom. Thank you so much, Boulder Rotary, for having us. Cinda Collins putting it together. Beautiful. Keep shining on for peace, everybody.
Good morning, everybody. If you can have a seat, we will continue on to our next event today. And I just want to thank again Rebecca Folsom for starting us off with such good energy and positive vibes. And as we move along into more of Boulder Builds Peace Week. For those of you who were not here earlier, this is our official launch. We've had 2 events so far, one at Naropa and one with the Jaipur Literature Festival. The schedule is on all your tables. There is more coming up on Sunday. We have panels and more music at BMOCA starting at 12:30, and then from 3 to 6 is the Peace Fair in the open space between the library and the city building. We'll have 45 organizations, all from Boulder, all working on some aspect of peace. From inner peace with meditation, the work we all have to do, marital peace, organizational peace, global peace, and even peace in outer space. So we kind of are trying to cover it all. I hope you can show up. The weather's not looking great. It's supposed to rain in the morning, but stop in the afternoon. But, you know, bring along some rain gear just in case. And then it continues on Thursday at CU with more panels on peace-building careers and also another keynote speaker. So I hope you'll join us at those. But meanwhile, we now have the pleasure to have a very respected, loved, renowned peace builder, John Paul Lederach. I've read several of his books, but one of my favorites is called The Moral Imagination. And Rebecca just spoke about wonder. And it's like, how do we all come together in creating this world that we want to see? And it will take our imagination and our wonder, but that we carry with it the values that we want to see incorporated. And John Paul has been a leader in doing this for many years, and we're so fortunate to have him here today to talk to us. One of his newest books, which is available out there, I believe for free on download, is a pocket guide to facing down a civil war. And it might be something we just want to all have in our back pockets just in case.
Thank you, Cinda. It's wonderful to be with you all. I have something to say before I speak. When Cinda first asked me whether I would come this morning for this and described things, she got to the place where she said, Rebecca Folsom will be leading off. And I thought in the back of my head, you have me at Rebecca Folsom. So it was a terrific opening. It's a great honor to be here in this place and with you all today. Part of what I want to talk about is what I've been giving a lot of thought and reflection to, having been an international peace builder, working in many settings of deep, violent, protracted conflict since the 1980s, to watch in my home country the rise of issues and patterns that led my email box to be flooded with 2 questions pretty consistently over the last 2 years. Question 1 was almost always, do you think we are being pulled into a civil war. And question 2 was almost always, what can I do about it? And at a certain point, I had, because I was moving in the world of foundations and philanthropy, I had a set of foundations ask me that question, but with a slight twist. And that twist was, given your international experiences of these settings, do you think there are a case or two that we should be looking at to inform us what we're doing here? And my response was, I don't think that there is an exact case. I've learned over time that everybody thinks their own situation is unique, and it has its own unique pieces. But there are patterns and there are dynamics that repeat over and over again. And we might want to take a look at what those are and how they function, and whether they are rising and visible in the settings where we live, and what the significance of that might be for how we respond. And in particular, how extraordinary people living in the middle of open violence and long-term war found ways to face down those dynamics and innovate whole approaches that shifted the cycles of violence. And that became basically the essence of a little book that I call the Pocket Guide. And you can find this on the internet, on my website, downloaded for free. At some point, it's going to come up as a physical book that can actually be handled and held, but right now it's in a digital form. So, before I go much further, let me start with my conclusion, because sometimes I get so wrapped up in stories I forget what I'm trying to get to. So my conclusion, so that you don't forget it, the best way to end a civil war is to stop it before it starts. And I think we are in a position that we can have access to some of that. So if I go back to that question, the lenses that I brought to this particular book were these two. What are key patterns that seem to happen over and again and that give me pause at night when I listen and feel and hear what's going on in our wider process over these last years, and in particular into a very volatile election period? What are some of those patterns? And the second is, what did I learn from people who responded to that kind of violence, ratcheted up into full-blown open warfare in the settings where they lived? So let's start with that first part. I learned, among other things, to watch for certain things while letting other things that tend to catch day-to-day attention and that draw us into kind of this back and forth of the deep and very toxic polarization. I tended to begin to understand how to watch for a set of dynamics or patterns that I found to be fairly prevalent. So let me start with the notion of polarization. Now, I think polarization, in fact, conflict itself, is actually pretty normal and good. There's nothing inherently wrong with deep differences about ways to approach the complexities of decisions that we have and the ways that we form our body politic. But what we find when we begin to watch those patterns that become deeply troublesome and harmful is how polarization begins to take a shift toward toxicity. That is, that polarization begins to poison our body politic. There would be a lot of things that we could explore around what are the patterns of how polarization intensifies. I'm not going to go into all of those this morning, given the time. But I think the key that I have noticed over and again is that when you take a small step back and ask the question, what is the product that a system of toxic polarization produces? What does it produce over and over again? And I think the primary things that it produces are really two. It produces paralysis. People feel paralyzed. Now, you may not have to go very far to notice this in your own life. If you're sitting at a restaurant and the table behind you gets into a conversation about politics, and you suddenly pick up little cues that they may be on a very different wavelength than you are, just notice what happens to your own body. How it tends to pull back and pull in, how it moves away, how if you are in an office or a hospital or a school where somebody who may hold very different views, in the midst of that toxicity, how you would choose to go down and into a different hallway if you noticed that somebody was coming, because you know what that might lead to and where you want to go or don't want to go. Seamus Heaney had it correct in Northern Ireland. His words in that extraordinary poem, "Whatever you say, say nothing." Now, why would he say that? Because in Northern Ireland, the instant that you open your mouth and speak a word, by way of your accent, by way of a particular name, people will immediately identify with which community you are identified. They will know to pinpoint who you are. They will know to read the signals. And so to avoid the discomfort on the easy side, and to avoid what's most feared, which is some form of harm on the other side, toxic polarization produces paralysis. It slows everything down in many ways, but in particular, it leaves us wondering what to do and how to do it. The second thing that I think comes with toxic polarization is that it lives to reproduce itself. It wants to replicate the pattern over and again. And with this kind of an understanding of a wider, if you will, systems view, we have to ask ourselves, what will be the impact if we live in a system that replicates toxicity but also produces paralysis? And I think that is what a lot of people faced in a lot of the locations where I worked. The second thing that I notice quite often is how people begin to frame what they're facing as a question of ultimate survival. Our survival is at stake. This can be with reference to the actual experience of living through generational violence, where they experience that what happened to their grandparents is being replicated again. And it can be with reference to particular moments. I'm struck, to be quite honest, with how much the framing of our current political electoral period moves deeply and quickly to the language of survival. If they win, we will not survive. Now, this poses a very challenging kind of a thing, because part of what comes with that is, quite frankly, the ways in which we watch the solidification, the nearly freezing of an us and them mentality. And one of the most extraordinary things, I think, about the dynamics of toxic polarization has to do with the ways in which we try to fit plurality into binaries. Plurality meaning that we have a wide and extraordinarily diverse humanity, that we try to push into the very kind of freezing of the us-them binary, of only having two ways of understanding what's at stake here. This, for me, is one of the things that leads to a dynamic that I've noticed over and again, which I, in this little pocket guide, referred to as the holy grail of grievance. When does grievance translate to justification of violence? And how does that happen? And the experiences that I've seen in a lot of places is that quite typically, grievance at that deepest level comes when people believe that there are no other options left but violence for their survival. Now, that I've seen in a lot of locations. What worries me here is, what are the pathways that lead from polarization to the justification of violence against our own citizens, against those who share our own neighborhoods, against those who are within the wider notion of who we are as a people and a country. And the dynamic that I notice over and again is that dehumanization is the pathway that leads from toxicity to the justification of violence, where the othering becomes at a point where our survival is at stake and we need to do something to stop them from eliminating us. Now, that I've seen in places where there is open violence, open warfare. The questions that come with it is, are we noticing the degradation of that level of dehumanization in the context that we are living through now? Electoral periods are always rough, no matter where you live. I worked a lot in the Rift Valley in Kenya. The interethnic bouts and rounds of violence over and again came during election periods. Very different context, but very similar in the dynamics of how people understood what was at stake, what was needed to protect and survive. And when survival is connected to the only option being violence, we have an enormous amount of difficulty. And I think we go then to the question of leadership. What are the dynamics we notice in other locations and that we can see happening quite often here at home? I would refer to it as the symbiotic relationship between leaders and followers, where at essence, leadership understands one of the core dynamics of what polarization can do. As polarization intensifies, it not only pushes people toward separated bubbles of engagement where they have very little contact across those identity divides, it has also been the case that intensifying polarization increases the possibility of those voices that have been more perceived as more extreme in their viewpoint of others. It gives rise to a platform of being more centered and available and visible within the public arena. So intensifying polarization can also often be the platform of rising leadership, more extreme coming to the more of the center. Over time, what that means, quite often, is that as that leadership intensifies, its public rhetoric becomes much sharper in the direction of fear, survival, and threat. And that rhetoric often creates the platform from which followers begin to act. So, a small thing that I tend to watch, pay a little less attention to the rhetoric, but take note of whether first followers begin to act, feeling justified in their action by the nature of what they're feeling at the level of the public appeal. Quite often, in a lot of circumstances that I've been in, I've discovered that leaders who are publicly making statements are often having a dynamic with their followers. And that dynamic is the following. What they have unleashed in public rhetoric is very difficult to pull back when people begin to act on it. And by virtue of that, the leadership often fears its followers, and the followers fear betrayal by the leader, creating a kind of a symbiosis of needing constantly to move to the easiest way to assure continued leadership, which is a more extreme view of threat. Now, this dynamic you could watch in a number of places, but certainly Northern Ireland would again be an extraordinary case in point. I take note, just as a parenthesis, this week, watching how quickly things evolved in Springfield, and that where Aurora, mentioned right in our backyard where we live, where the level of language may not have been nearly as significant as the pattern of response of how quickly it moved to create actual harm for people in local communities. Now, this combination of things, I think, is one of the dynamics that we've seen over and again. What I often refer to this is that we end up with people in leadership feeling like they're leading from the wake. Once unleashed, they're having to respond to what it is that has been unleashed. And that's that dynamic which sociologists, my particular background, would refer to as reciprocal causation. That the cause of what is emerging and growing is the response to the latest response, and the counter response that at some point becomes independent of the deeper issues that have to actually be dealt with. And that notion of reciprocal causation is essentially the way out of polarization. The way out of that toxicity is to produce more of it. And that's the challenge that often comes with what happens when the body politic becomes poisoned and becomes connected to the possibility that violence is justified. We could add to that the challenge of the spectacular, something that we here in the US tend to refer to as the lone wolf, where even the language by which it happens, the person who quotes has a mental problem that has acted out with violence, not to be denied by any means that there may be those kinds of issues happening, but we don't take note of how that very language does not permit us to ask the question, what is the pattern that is emergent and has greater capacity to continue to grow? Once violence is unleashed, my final one or two small comments. Once violence is unleashed, it is very hard to stop. I've been the head of with a couple of colleagues at the University of Notre Dame, of a comparative peace research program on national peace accords from 1988 through to last year. Roughly 37 agreements that have been studied across 80 different variables that these peace agreements agree to. We have things that we know about what works and doesn't work. We mostly know that we fail a lot more than we succeed. We mostly know that the length of an internal civil war, violent conflict within a given country lasts an average of 10 years before they are able to reach a negotiated settlement. By and large, the vast majority come by way of negotiated settlements eventually. There are a small number that do not. Comparisons have shown that those that are able to reach and implement agreements they have done have an ability for those to be sustained beyond the 5-year mark, which is generally the period between 1 and 5 years that peace agreements fail. The longest of these wars has been in places that have had extraordinary challenges. Colombia, Myanmar, the Sudans, Israel, Palestine, which is an international but a configured location of extraordinary difficulty that dates way past half centuries into a full century. So if there was ever one thing to take note of, it would be that once unleashed, violence and the wider pattern of violence becomes very difficult to come back from. My final note, why pocket guide? Obviously, it's less than 100 pages. You could put it in a pocket. But I was more interested in the language that I kept hearing myself think about, my colleagues mentioned, about the reality that most of these armed conflicts do not start at a national level as somehow they're coming down to the local level, but rather that the presence of and a capacity of violence emerges from local pockets of engagement, where more open presence of violence, the use of performative violence, the efforts to create fear and rituals of fear often became the mainstay of how pockets emerged that were stitched together, and that at a given point in time could begin to move in concerted ways across a given context. So part of the idea that I had with pocket was watch your pockets. Don't focus exclusively on a national level. The infrastructure and the webbing that will be needed for something to move from sporadic, isolated incidents of violence to sustained violence will come by way of a capacity to stitch pockets of that kind of influence and capacity. Now, let me change my tune just a bit and say, but that is also the genius of what I have seen over and again from people who have faced down violence in the places where they have lived. That innovation that comes from building around and with the places that you live. So what have I learned? What have we learned from the pocket imagination that says we can stop this and these cycles of violence? So, because I can't talk endlessly this morning, I thought I would bring, let me see if that changed it. Am I aiming the right way? Yeah, I thought I would bring you the faces of 3 sets of people. Their stories appear in this little pocket guide. They also appear in the Moral Imagination if you're interested. This is Decca Ibrahim. Every one of these faces could be the source of a full book. Decca, the book title for Decca would be How 6 Women Stopped a War. It's a story in the border area between Kenya and Somalia of women known as the Women of Wajir, who initiated a process that began to reduce and then end the sub-clan militia violence, basically a war, in the areas where they lived. Their recipe, so take note, there's no secret Einsteinian thing to this. It is so simple sometimes that you wonder how it's possible. What they say in their own words, and in the pocket guide, you'll find a link that you can listen and watch them. They produced a video. We decided to sit together to see what we knew across the sub-clans that were in the Wajir town area. In that conversation, we had to decide who we knew and how would we begin to access those people. And then we decided together to jointly do one thing: make the market safe for anybody to buy and sell. Okay. Starting point, local. Starting point, reach out just beyond your sub-clan. You can make that into bubbles if you want to here in the US. Ask what you know together. Ask who you know together. Ask one thing that can be done together. And when you jointly do something together, Decca will tell you, you can stop a war. This is Balu Chowdhury, the southern region of Nepal, a former bonded laborer, a form of modern slavery. now a member of the Conflict Transformation Natural Resource Network of Nepal. Released from bonded labor, their groups had to move to places to actually survive and live, which meant rivers and forests and land. They occupied those places, quotes, as encroachers. Where do you go if you're a released slave group? In that context, conflicts emerged in the midst of the Civil War over who has right and access to forest, to water, to land. This particular movement has taken on the challenge of asking the question, how do we transform relationships of the people who depend on the land and the forest and the water without using violence? I wonder what Balu's book might be. He said it in as many words. How leading my people led me to make friends of our enemies. It's a long story. I could go into it. It would take the rest of my time if I did. It's an extraordinary movement. Again, it's well worth taking a look at a basic idea that communities are actually responsible for protecting the forests where they live, that they're actually responsible for finding ways to manage and understand the conflicts that they have that cannot rely any longer on guns and violence. Or the notion of leadership that asks the question, how do I lead for the whole and not just exclusively for my particular group? That was something that in our work over about 10 years, we referred to as Balu's dilemma. Because at one point he came up and said to the whole of the group, all this stuff we're trying to do, I'm not sure what I should do. Because when I'm with my group, the Muktakamaya, the former bonded laborers, right? They say, Balu, you're one of us. When you go there, you defend us. But when I am with the forest user group, this group that has joined together to protect the forest, they say, Balu, you are one of us. You have to protect us against them. And his question was, who am I? Who am I? It's a question well worth asking yourself. It's a question to ask about what kind of leader will I choose to be where I live? The middle person you probably recognize. To the left is Jaime. Of note for we Coloradans, Jaime's brother was one of the principal commanders of the FARC movement, was extradited and is now outside of Pueblo, Colorado, in the high security prison, which is known as the ADX Florence, and is sometimes referred to as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, where high security people are placed often in solitary confinement. Jaime comes once a year through Denver and down to Pueblo on a one-a-year visit of his brother. The other side is Jorge. Jorge is the son of Jorge 40, George 40, to put it in English for you. One of the most notorious and well-known founders of the paramilitarism movement in Colombia. Extradited, both of these people, on drug charges, and in a prison outside of Miami. These two, what would be their potential title of a book? I think it might be, they call us the improbables. They call us the improbables. How we stopped a war that never happened. Now, in Colombia, the war has lasted more than 50 years. The region where they live, Valledupar and Cesar, the department the state within which they live, has experienced decades of that kind of violence. These two people come from very opposite sides of that political and armed violence. Yet here they are in a gathering of people, a plurality of people, including indigenous, campesino, political leaders, commercial and businessmen, the whole range. It's kind of like a mini Rotary of the armed conflict, all gathered, not because they're writing or carving a national agreement, because they're asking the question, what is our responsibility to stop the cycle of violence where we live in this place? And they refer to that as the diálogos improbables, the improbable dialogues, where unlikely people come together. Not for a one-time visit to do some form of peace tourism, but because they've committed themselves to this kind of conversation over years. So, if we were to take our three faces, just go back and revisit them so you can see them. Everyday people, ordinary people in many regards, engaged in highly unlikely behavior given the level of violence and the level of toxicity in the polarization. To engage in things that are responsive to their particular area. What might they say to us about what they have learned in facing down the dynamics and patterns that lead to a civil war? I think it probably comes down to three. Obviously, each of the three has 8 or 10 subpoints. I'm just going to try to touch the three so you can kind of sit with them for a minute. The first point would be start where you live, but reach out beyond who you normally talk to. Reach out, okay? That would be the one thing that they consistently did across these settings. To take the words of the women of Wajir, sit and think with people who are accessible, different, and find something you can do together. Now, that little mix actually offers something that the group that calls themselves the improbables, I think puts forward as a theory of change. Precisely a theory of change aimed at toxicity. And that is this. When we are in highly polarized settings, most of us begin to listen with our eyes. Let me see if I can explain what I mean by that. That when we hear somebody speak, make a proposal about policy or something that should be done, when we're highly polarized, we may not know who that person is, but we will immediately begin to ask the question, who are they connected with? Who is their primary set of people? What side are they on? That's what polarization does. It makes you want to assume safety by knowing who the other is. Now, some places and sometimes there are visible signals, accents, skin color, could be a whole range of things that might be linguistic choices in given context. All of them are signals of identity. And what our eyes are looking for are what? To know who this person is, who they're associated with, to know whether or not it merits our time to listen to what they're saying. So when we listen with our eyes, we don't actually listen. We're just trying to figure out who they are in the situation in order to either discredit or to credit their particular view. Now, if you have two people like Jaime and Jorge show up together and make a proposal, what happens? People who look at them say, I can't figure out immediately how to pigeonhole this. It creates kind of a theory of surprise. There's like, oh, how is it possible that these two people who are on opposite sides of things are actually coming in our town to make this proposal, right? And then what happens? You have to look a second time. You have to look a second time because you can't immediately arrive at a conclusion of who that person is. Now, that's what I would call the pause of curiosity. It creates a small slowing down, enough of a pause that you reconsider what it is that these people are saying. There'd be a lot of ways to put this, but one of them is just to simply take note of the word respect. Respect in Latin, specere, added with the re specere. Specere is the Latin verb for to watch. That's why the word spectator, for example, is people that watch. Re specere, respect, means that you turn and you look again. You turn and you look again. You begin to entertain something at a deeper level than what is immediately visible. That, I think, sits with much of what needs to be done to shock the system of toxicity. How to create the pauses of curiosity that permit us to see each other as people first, and policy or position second. Simple pause, which leads to the second big point. Most of these people, the core of what they did was to humanize, if not rehumanize, the face of conflict. They engaged what we might call the habits of humanization. What are a few of those habits? Because we might want to ask the question whether they aren't accessible to us in our everyday encounters. I think the core habits of humanization are the following. Refuse to belittle other people, no matter who they are. Look and see a person first. Listen to understand another's life experience. Speak from your own life experience. Speak from conviction without retreat, but also without blame or demonization. Of all the things I hear in a lot of places I work, people want a simple, honest conversation. Not a bunch of fluff and other things. So speak from conviction, don't retreat, but don't speak with blame and demonization. That's a habit of humanization. Notice your own defensiveness. When you become defensive, it's often in reaction to something. Notice what that reaction is and choose reflection over reaction. A small pause. Become curious about your own defensiveness. Uphold the dignity of others. Confront dehumanization, especially in your own community. The single most significant act to move against toxicity is the ability to speak to your own community when we and they engage in forms of dehumanization. Personally, I think one of the most extraordinary public examples of that was John McCain. In that given moment, when at a rally, running for president, somebody said something about Obama's family and Obama that was not true, about being Arab or Muslim. And John McCain said, no, that is not true. He is a good man and has a good family. I just disagree with him on these things. That was maybe the singular public moment that has not found its way back into our public life for a long time. Number 3, stick with it. These conversations are not about one-time events to see what they think. This is about quality of relationship. that requires the display and the commitment to patience and persistence, to honesty and grace, and at its essence, I think, begins to build the connective tissue where we live that permits us to be different but be committed to not doing politics by the way of violence. I think it sits at the absolute base of what Harold Saunders, one of our undersecretaries of state, called sustained dialogue. That is, that if the pattern is moving from sporadic to sustained violence, the pocket imagination that must push back is moving from single conversation to sustained, engaged conversation and dialogue where we live and with the people that we know have deep differences. That is, at essence, how democracy is held together. Very close. Okay. Finally, let me say a word about my last little image, which was this living root bridge from India that I first heard about in the work in Nepal. These are bridges that are built originally for the purpose of working for a solution during monsoon season, when the rush of waters would eliminate the possibilities of people crossing rivers that lived on both sides. A living fig is rooted on both sides, but people innovated ways to weave their roots up into a walkable bridge. Now, this becomes a very fascinating question about what bridge building requires. Rootedness, but the weaving of roots to something that provides a wider capacity to be responsive to the whole of what's needed. So, began as innovation, requires weaving and care over years, and it keeps alive the notion of creativity that connects lives. What might that mean for Boulder and Boulder Rotary? My last little point. So I have three observations. I came here to Boulder in the early 1980s. I came as a Mennonite chasing the Quakers. Some of you remember a few of them: Elise Boulding, Kenneth Boulding, Paul Ware. There's a whole range of folks that were, Paul was my dissertation chair here at the university. This is how I came here. I know three things about Boulder, because basically we've never left the state. We may live in slightly different parts, from Nederland to Silverthorne to Louisville, but we're in this area. One, Boulder is a peace hub. If you ask historically the question of where are the locations, the acupuncture points of peace engagement, academically, practically, one of those pinpoints would fall, maybe the principal one, in Boulder. Boulder's a peace hub. Observation two, Boulder has sister cities all over the world. And number three, according to everything I've been able to discover by way of research, Boulder County votes 80% Democrat. I think that qualifies us as a bubble. In fact, reference points outside of Boulder often refer to Boulder as a bubble. So my question for you all today, what about some diálogos improbables? Maybe we need sister cities here in the US. I take as an example a group in Massachusetts and Kentucky who started something called Hands Over the Hills. Deep blue Massachusetts, deep red Kentucky began a sister city conversation. Has the time come for a network of improbable sister bubbles across the US to emerge? Not so much that we occasionally see each other or travel through our locations, but something deeper, more sustained. Maybe we need the Rotary to start to function like a living fig bridge. What would that require? So my conclusion, while I know that conversation is only one part of a very complex puzzle. My experience suggests over and again that people who sustain their relationships across divides over time, those people that stitch pockets of connection, create the web of resistance that refuses the tyranny of the few who choose violence. I think we can be a part of that, because I believe deeply that the very thing that ends civil wars is the very thing we need to prevent them. We need to engage and talk at deep levels over time as people. The best way to end a civil war is to stop it before it starts. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. So, how are we doing? Are we all set? So, back during our Boulder Rotary Centennial Year of 2019, the Peace Building Committee decided to create a Peace Award to honor Jim Swaby. Back up, Tyler. Back up one. Thank you. Keep that up for a little more. Anyway, Jim Swaby, who gave his time, talent, humor, and passion to build a better world. The award was to be presented annually, honoring persons or organizations for outstanding achievement with the ideals of Rotary, as expressed in the fourth object of Rotary. Quote, the advancement of international understanding, goodwill, and peace through a world fellowship of business and professional persons united in the ideal of service. This is now our 6th year of presenting this award. Now we can go to the marble slide. I wanted to show you. This is our monument to the infinite walk of peace. And in the monument that Dr. Robert Sievers is the artist who created the bench and the marble artwork, is over, anyway, I'll get down to my words. The names of the Peace Award honorees are inscribed in nameplates on the marble work of art. This is the plaque that describes our infinite walk of peace, describing the work and the artwork and how we're honoring Jim and the other honorees. The display is located in front of the Municipal Penfield Tate Building at Broadway and Canyon. Jim Swaby was a true Rotarian and exemplified our motto, service above self, as good as anyone. Jim was a graduate of CU, volunteered to join the Peace Corps, where he served in the Kingdom of Tonga, but during the height of the Vietnam War, he was drafted away from the Peace Corps and served for 13 months in Vietnam. Jim returned home and married Susan Gear in 1970. Susan, his daughter Cynthia, and his 2 grandchildren, Addison and Whitley, are with us today. Susan and family, would you stand and be recognized? Jim had a successful real estate and banking career. Some of his honors were being awarded the Boulder Camera's Pacesetter Award for Business, and he was a recipient of the Dean Callan Award for Commercial Brokers of Boulder. Jim served on many boards, including the Colorado Ballet, where he was a founder of the Cultural Facilities District. He was also a founder of the Leeds School of Business Real Estate Council. If Jim were here today, he would be helping lead our Peace Builders Committee, which has been responsible for helping create the Infinite Walk of Peace with placement of peace poles in the Peace Garden and helping the community celebrate the International Peace Day, which is tomorrow. As with any year, the process for choosing the honoree for this award was very rewarding and challenging. We had many nominated candidates, and each and every one of them were worthy of the award. I love this project because it demonstrates to us how wonderful the community we live in is, and it introduces us to people who help create hope and peace locally and around the world. Our first honoree was our own Dorothy Rupert. In 2020, we honored Ellen Moore. In 2021, we honored Leslie Durgan. In 2022, we honored Betty Ball and Leroy Moore. Last year, we honored Peter and Beth Ornstein. So you've already clapped for them, but I wanted them to stand. So today, Dorothy, Ellen, Leslie, Peter, and Beth are here to join us. As we move on to announce our 2024 honoree. So today so you showed those pictures, thank you. Today we are celebrating the 2024 announcement of the award as one of the important components of the Boulder Builds Peace Initiative. I am proud to announce that our 2024 honoree is, Joe Pelly. Unfortunately, Joe was not able to meet with us today, but we'll have another meeting and present it to him in person. Joe Pelly was our Boulder County Sheriff for 20 years. Joe is a Colorado native growing up in Boulder. Joe started his career at an early age and went to work as a deputy sheriff and worked through the ranks until he was elected sheriff in 2003. Joe has a bachelor's degree with Metropolitan State College, a master's degree in criminal justice from the University of Colorado. Sheriff Pelly led a full-service public safety agency with approximately 450 employees. During his 5 terms as sheriff, he managed major improvements in facilities, staffing, training, and equipment. The department had to deal with several major natural disasters, including floods and fires, during those 20 years. Sheriff Pelly is most proud of the establishment of Character First as his working motto for his mission statement for the Sheriff's Office. So Boulder Rotary is proud to announce him today as the 2024 honoree for the Jim Swaby Peace Award. Thank you. Guess what? I'm next. I'm a lucky guy. It is my pleasure today to introduce to you the president of Naropa University, Charles Leaf. Chuck, as he goes by, is joining us today for us to help him celebrate the 50th anniversary of the founding of Naropa here in Boulder. I hope that Chuck shares his story about his origins with the nascent Naropa Institute back in 1974. Boulder Rotary wants to acknowledge and thank Naropa University for bringing a world-class contemplative education university to our community. Naropa University has been a dedicated partner in our Boulder Builds Peace events this week. Naropa University will continue to provide mindfulness, compassion, and the advancement of international understanding, goodwill, and peace. Please welcome President Charles Leaf.
Thanks, Danny. Thanks, Danny, and thank you all for inviting me. I'm noticing, especially this week, the increasing importance of this space. Last night, I have the privilege of serving as the chair of the board of Bridge House, and last night I was in that chair at that table for our annual fundraising dinner, which was extremely successful. Happy to be sharing this time with you today, and tomorrow night I'll be in that chair at that table with 300 people celebrating Naropa's 50th anniversary. So I think the vibration in this room is increasing by the day, which is really important, I think, as a resource for Boulder. Peace Week is really important, clearly to the Rotary and also to a university like Naropa. There's a Buddhist teaching that says generosity is the virtue which produces peace. And that's very much the way in which the Naropa education and the Naropa pedagogy is built. But generosity is not just financial, it's not just philanthropy, it's also generosity to self. Naropa's motto, one of our mottos, is transform yourself, transform the world, and we bridge both. We bring both together. The experiment in 1974 was to look at whether or not Western academic traditions coming together with contemplative practices, which are not unique only to Asia, because there's contemplative traditions in Christianity and in Judaism as well, but whether or not bringing those together in a single university, not as electives, but actually embedded in the programs, the classes, the degrees, could work. And I think the answer that we're prepared to give now is absolutely. Naropa's founding was in what was, this will date me, but maybe some of you remember, the old RTD bus barn, which was where Alfalfa's then was and is now a building that has yet to be find a new incarnation on Broadway and Arapahoe. And we hoped that 200 or 300 people would come this summer to join with some faculty that decided to spend some of their summer in Boulder. It was sort of Woodstocky in that we had 2,000 people that showed up instead of 250. We figured about 2/3 of them actually paid, and the other third somehow figured out how to get in the door. But we had a remarkable summer with scientists and religious scholars and artists and other creatives, writers and poets, psychologists, all coming together to explore one theme, which was whether or not there would be a benefit to the world to consider a university that was built on the contemplative practices of mindfulness and compassion. And that's the work that we've done for the last 50 years. Showing up very differently year after year. Everything to do with who the faculty are at a given moment, who the students are at a given moment. How do we bring people together? The 21st century expression of Naropa is very different from the 1974 expression in many ways, but in some ways not so much. We were at a time in 1974 where political discourse was harsh. It was the summer of Watergate and the summer of a resignation of a president. It was a very tough time then. We were not very far away from the Vietnam experience, by only months really. Not very far away from political violence and the assassinations of Dr. King and Bobby Kennedy and Malcolm X. And this was, in a way, sadly, we're having echoes of the 1974 Naropa. We think we are better prepared to deal with those issues today. I appreciated the talks earlier, and I do think that that's the sort of vision of Naropa. It's why we were started, and it's where we are today. I've been asked about, what did we think in 1974 about the Naropa future, which sort of cracks me up in a way, because thinking about the future in 1974 in that summer was whether or not the box lunches were going to show up for the next afternoon, and frequently they did not. Thinking about it now, we actually do take a 10, 20, 50, 100-year view forward. So I'm very grateful to be able to share a bit of the Naropa story. I do want to say that Naropa and Boulder has been a current conversation, and I think it's important for me to talk about that a little bit. I'll say very clearly, and despite my best efforts to get the message out, Naropa is not leaving Boulder. We're not moving as an all-virtual university. We will continue to be here. We will continue to thrive in Boulder. We'll continue to hire people here. We'll continue to invite students here. We have a campus 500 feet from here across the street, which is going to be further developed over time. And yes, we are also an evolving university. 500 liberal arts colleges in the last 10 years have closed in the United States. Many of those colleges came from spiritual or faith communities. Many of them closed while still sitting on significant assets, mostly in real estate. And for whatever reason, and I will not put myself in the shoes of the leadership of those schools, they closed their doors, leaving behind hundreds of millions of dollars of assets that, from our point of view, in many cases could have been deployed for a future of those universities in a different form. And so for Naropa, we're in a situation now where we're fortunate in a way that COVID happened, Friday night we were in person, Monday everything was online, as many of you know if you're in businesses as well. But we realized that we were actually able to very successfully teach through that modality, mostly hybrid. So we were inviting people to Boulder for periods of time, but then mostly they were studying elsewhere. To the point now where we actually have 48% of our students are studying in this hybrid method. 49 states, 21 countries. So the reach of Naropa right now, we're a small school, we're 1,200 students, but we are actually a global community. The opportunity arose for us to consider the use of the campus at 20th and Arapahoe. Not going to get into too much into the depths of real estate development, but it is a very, very difficult place to develop unless it's being developed for something a little more income generating like housing or something like that. So for us, while it is beautiful, and my wife, who was the president of Naropa in 1980, is the person that actually did the deal to rent the property from the Boulder Valley School District, and then we put together the money to buy it. So we're very invested in that property without question. But we have an opportunity now to be the fortune that we had in being able to buy that property then means that we now have a source of capital 3 and 4 years from now to be able to invest in staff and faculty and students and programs for the next 50 or 500 years in ways that many, many schools around this country just don't. And that's something that we wanted to take full advantage of. we don't know what we're going to do with all this investment capital. And I'm being very serious when people ask me, well, how are we going to spend the money? I'm refusing to answer that question because I want this to be a community process, and that means within the Naropa community, but also the broader Boulder community. I've had more conversations with people outside of Naropa probably in the last 2 months about our future than I have in the 12 years that I've been president, and that's actually a really great thing for us. And so the conversations that we'll have over the next 3 years or so are going to be really important, and I think they're going to address the ways in which Boulder broadly can be working in the area of culture and education. Conversations about whether or not should there be more collaboration, for example, between the performing arts community, where we have many performing arts spaces that are dark 80% of the time. And are we using our built environment in a way that's the most effective and the most efficient? And should we find ways in which to work together more deliberately? It's just one idea of many that we want to explore. So I will stop the Naropa speech with this. I know Danny said that, asked me if I'd welcome any questions, which is absolutely fine. I'm grateful. We are committed to Boulder. We're not leaving. We will continue to say that. We will continue to hope that our local press will at some point pick up that response, but I'm tenacious and we won't give it up. I think the 300 people that will be together tomorrow night will speak with one voice that we are committed to being in Boulder, and I look forward, our partnership around Peace Week is extremely meaningful. I look forward to finding ways to do that again next year as well, and I'm very grateful for the Rotary's invitation. So thank you.
Thank you. Before your time, we had in Boulder the finest school of massage in the country, the Boulder College of Massage Therapy. I was on the board for many years. Its downfall began because it was so famous. It attracted students from all over the world. The downfall began after 9/11, when the foreign students couldn't get visas. In 2013, when the school closed, Naropa bought the intellectual property, and there were rumors that they were going to create the first 4-year degree in massage therapy. Can you tell me what the status of that project or rumor is?
So the intellectual property of a decade ago is a little stale, but it's still there. We did buy it. We also bought a lot of equipment that we've recently sold to other massage therapists because it's sort of sitting there unused and getting old. We hoped that we could actually buy the building that the school was in and spent a year with the owner, and I don't know how much experience you had with the building owner at that time, but it was a very hard, and I come out of a real estate development background, and it was a very tough conversation because we didn't have the space, but we thought if we could go into that building and do it, we would do something. Quite honestly then, we still have it. We still have an interest in a health and healing track. We moved into other areas, particularly in our psychology program in neuroscience and other forms of counseling psychology. It's still an aspiration. I'd be misleading you to say it's on the front burner, but it's a conversation that we continue. We've saved the curriculum. It's still there, and yeah, I would think that in not too long from now, it would be a conversation ready to happen again. We were approached a few years ago about also doing something similar with the Southwest College of Acupuncture, which also closed in Boulder. Tried again, but it's a big capital-intensive adventure, and as a small school, we sort of had to make some choices. But it's not finished. Yeah.
Thank you. Some years ago, I had the opportunity to benefit from some interns that came from Naropa through the long-term care program. And my understanding is that program's not going on anymore. But I so loved the ability of the teachings that came from Naropa to bring to healthcare, which is kind of stodgy, pretty Western perspective, to bring in that Eastern perspective. Is there attempts to bring that program back?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the gerontology program as a degree didn't have the sort of audience that we had hoped. However, the curriculum was very relevant. And so, for example, right now we've grown about 500% in both an online and in-person Master of Divinity program, which is training chaplains, many of whom are working in elder care. And that's something that's an incredibly popular degree that's continuing to grow. The same holds, so Naropa has less than 1% of the total number of graduate students in the state, no surprise. We graduate 22% of the licensed therapists in the state. And so through our 5 concentrations in our graduate program of counseling psychology, and embedded in those programs, which includes art therapy and somatic counseling and mindfulness-based therapy, we've embedded a lot of the geriatric or elder care work that was in that program. As a standalone degree, it didn't work, and the same held true for an early childhood degree, which honestly, I thought it was borderline unethical for us to continue to run because of the cost to a student where they could get the same training, good training at a community college, and the sad news of what early childhood teachers are paid. For us to encourage students to come to the Naropa program, which I thought was really great, was hard. And I would like to find a way to be able to bring that back, but the economics of higher education is a tough one to work on. So it isn't that we abandoned those interests, but figuring out a way to integrate it into other programs seems to have been a more effective way to do it.
Hello. I would be very happy to join this 50-year celebration, 50 years. I cannot go back to all the 50, but I go back to 47. In 1977, I came here with a crew of filmmakers headed by Costanzo Allione from Rome. We filmed at Naropa a documentary called Fry Shoes Cook Diamonds about the poets of the Beat Generation, Allen Ginsberg, all those Ferlinghetti, all those poets of the Beat Generation at that time, at the Naropa Institute that still didn't have the building on Arapao. He was renting, Naropa was renting from a school, from one place to another, moving continuously, and finally they acquired the building on Arapao. So I'm very pleased to be some kind of survivors for all this year, afflicted by my age, but still on my legs, and would be happy to participate in this glorious event.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate, I think we're probably the only university in the country that started on the second floor above a delicatessen, which we did on the mall, New York Deli, and then made a series. We were very nomadic in the early days, and it was very good fortune that we were able to get into the Lincoln School and be able to buy that building, so I don't diminish that at all. Now the question is, how do we look at the next century of Naropa's thriving?
Do we have any more questions in the room? Oh.
Well, thanks for speaking to the club. I guess my question concerns community. And once you sell the property and you move forward, what are your plans for keeping that very special Naropa community?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and I would say, there's 450 people across the street that very much are a community right now. One of the challenges we've had there, which is a slight gift from the JCC, is that we have had a prairie dog colony that has prevented us from doing anything on that land for the last no offense to the JCC, but they did migrate across the street. We have finally, sorry, it's true. Next week, the prairie dogs are moving to 9,000 acres near Pueblo, a dedicated prairie dog reserve. That is, I know, for all the things I've done, I've been saying to people that I'm sure my only legacy at Naropa is I was the guy that was able to get the prairie dogs moved. But what it will allow, and it's to the community question as well, is part of community is actually having space for random encounters, which doesn't work in an office building. And so one of the things we now will be able to do with the acres that we have across the street is to bring back the landscaping and the space for gathering and that kind of thing. It's a very important part of what we do. On the other hand, there's a whole lot of faculty that could come and give lots of talks about how community can be built in a virtual space. It's a little beyond me to articulate it as well as they do, but I would say that people that are studying at Naropa right now who are in Nepal and in India and in Europe feel that they're part of a community. Is it the same thing that we generally used to call community? Not so much, but there's definitely tools and ways of doing it. And so we're going to do both. I mean, I don't see Naropa ever not being a residential university, even as we continue to look at the opportunities to have a more worldwide impact. Oh, wow.
So I often hear about Naropa that the focus is contemplation and compassion in its teaching. But pretty much everyone I have met seems to have this common theme of living life led by intuition. And often in a society today where we encompass so much diversity, how do you put those two combatant, conflicting ideologies together? Because often utilitarianism in a scientific, diverse, encompassing world like we live in today, where there is objectivity, has been the way that we have a global compassion rather than intuition, than feelings.
I didn't sign up for this, I don't think. So, there's a lot there. So first of all, I'll maybe debate a little bit about whether or not intuition and what you described in terms of contemplation is at odds. I don't think it is. I think from a Buddhist perspective, intellect and intuition are actually seen as two sides of the same coin. And I think that's part of the inspiration for founding Naropa 50 years ago was whether or not there was a place for the intuitive mind to come together in a way that, however, that wasn't undisciplined, that came together in an environment which was academically rigorous as well as being welcoming of spontaneity and intuition, which is the reason that it was important for us to have musicians and performers and artists and poets and playwrights to be in the same room with anthropologists and neuroscientists, not just in the same university, but actually in the same space, engaging in dialogue across disciplines. And so for us, that's been Naropa's sort of secret sauce, I think, from the beginning, is to bring both together. So there's a whole lot more, but I'm sure my 10 minutes is way off. But anyway, thank you. It's a great question.
Well, I think we have time for one more question, if anybody has one. Oh, excuse me.
Hi, thank you for coming today. It's been really interesting. I have a question that maybe is broader than Naropa, but you've raised it a couple of your points. When I went to college, it wasn't that expensive.
Could you hold?
I'm sorry.
Thanks.
When I went to college, it wasn't that expensive. I could make money on my own and pay for it. When my kids went to college, I paid for that. It was a lot more. And I hear even today, 10 years later, it's even more expensive. So do you have any views on why education has become so expensive and how do we deal with that?
Oh yeah, I had a lot of views.
Thank you. Good question.
I mean, partially it's become so expensive because everything else has become so expensive. I mean, for us, I paid $180 a month when I moved to Boulder in 1974, and that ain't happening today. And so for our faculty, there's only so far east that our faculty and staff can move and still find it affordable, so we have to increase on the compensation side. There's a regulatory environment, and I don't want to get into a long debate about it, but for a school of 1,200, we are bound by the same array of education regulations as CU is, and don't have nearly as many students' tuition dollars to amortize it over. So that's a lot of it. I think that there are expectations of what, and this is the interesting conversation about a bricks and mortar campus versus a virtual space. I think for us to continue to move into the virtual world, we're going to have a tuition differential, which is actually going to acknowledge that there are things we don't provide if students are working virtually. So that's one area that I think is going to be important to work on. And, you know, in a case like Naropa, I mean, we don't have a very large endowment. Our endowment's in the sort of $8 or $10 million range, which is sort of nothing in this world. But we do, about 20% of our students pay at the full rate. 52% of our tuition dollars go back to students now in the form of financial aid. And so, again, despite some of the messages in the Daily Camera, our average tuition is less than CU's, close but less. It's not double as was reported because of how much we put back and the generosity of those students that can afford it to actually be willing to pay. So, but those 500 schools that closed because of exactly what you're bringing up. I mean, I paid $2,400 when I went to the law school at CU. I mean, it seemed like a lot of money at the time, but it's a completely different world. Yeah. I mean, we spend $1.2 million on health insurance for a university of our size, which, you know, is tenfold what we paid 25 years ago. And I'm not sure the healthcare, I mean, it's good healthcare in the West, but I'm not sure it's that much better than it was 20 years ago. So there's a lot of that.
Well, I get to be the responder, so you're seeing me one more time. But Boulder Rotary is extremely proud of Naropa University, but I want to let you know we're 105 years old.
Right.
You know, you're coming up quick, and you'll make it there. But anyway, as you would remember, one of the things we like to offer to you, and you know that the Rotary has a polio campaign to eradicate polio around the world and has for 35 years. And in your honor, we are providing you, we're going to provide 100 doses of polio vaccine. So thank you again for today.
You.
Okay. Chuck, do you like how Danny flexed on you with that age thing? It's kind of rough. I'll meet you outside, he said. Okay, the brew.
This week's Super Harvest Moon, seen at Longmonth's Golden Ponds, foreshadows the brew, the Boulder Rotary Update for September 20.
This year's District 5450 conference is coming right up on Saturday, September 28th. The theme of the conference is Protecting the Environment, What Rotarians Can Do. Join your fellow Rotarians to hear from keynote speakers, participate in breakout sessions, and visit exhibits in the House of Friendship. Members of BRC's Preserve Planet Earth Committee will participate on a panel on what District 5450 environmental sustainability committees are doing to protect the environment. That's Saturday, September 28th. Boulder Rotary's next book is the New York Times bestseller, The Moment of Lift by Melinda Gates. The book explores how empowering women changes the world and advances educational attainment, writing with emotion, candor, and grace, not to mention presenting startling data. Gates introduces us to remarkable women and shows the power of connecting with one another. Susan Conley is hosting the next meeting of the BRC Book Club on October 14th. You are invited to participate in an engaging conversation and enjoy light refreshments.
What is WASH? In the often daunting world of Rotary acronyms, WASH stands for Water, Sanitation, and Hygiene, a very active local Rotary action group of District 5450. The 15th Annual WASH Symposium on Saturday, October 19, seeks to build resilience in water, sanitation, and hygiene, which is crucial for ensuring sustainable and effective communities. A highlight of the event is the plenary speaker, William Kamkwamba, co-author of the New York Times best-selling memoir, The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, and the Netflix film adaptation. Get washed on Saturday, October 19. Check the District 5450 website for details or contact Charlotte Ream. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Carl.
Carl, who?
Carl gets you there faster than a bicycle.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Butcher.
Butcher who?
Put your arms around me and give me a kiss.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Harmony.
Harmony who?
Harmony, knock, knock jokes do I need to do here?
Hey, please note that our next meeting is October 11th at Fraser Meadows, not at the JCC. Wildfires are more than just a spark in the forest. They're a blazing threat to our lives, health, homes, and ecosystems, and they're becoming more common. Tackling this fiery menace isn't just a job for firefighters. It involves everyone from city planners to park managers, and yes, even you. Join us for an eye-opening talk with Dr. Natasha Stavros, a master of complex systems and innovation. Dr. Stavros has worked with the U.S. Forest Service, NASA, and Ball Aerospace. Now, through her business, Wicked Solutions, she's helping communities like ours solve the most complex problems. Come learn what makes wildfires such a wicked problem and discover how you can be part of the solution. Don't miss out. Be a wildfire warrior.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Hava.
Hava who?
Have a great weekend.
You're in trouble. That was... Okay, Peace Week updates, Jim or Cinda? Or Randy. Randy's coming back up. And Daryl Brown, you are on deck.
Well, so I guess I could update by, we've had some really great sessions. I think today's session, how many of you were here to hear one of my heroes? Thanks for coming. So let me update you on what's next out. And by the way, Jim, if there's something I'm forgetting to talk about, be sure and kind of give me some kind of hand signals or whatever, okay? Yeah. So we have on all of the tables, I'm pretty sure, a copy of this, and I hope you'll take a look at it because what's coming up next is on Sunday. And we are going to have two discussion panels that start with Ars Nova's singers. We're going to start with music as we did today, which I thought was awesome. And then we'll have a panel discussion led by, where is Jim Holderman? Is Jim still among us or did he have to leave? And and so you can see, you know, Jesse Torres at Elmendorf from the United Nations Association, Giselle Hersfeld with Rocky Mountain Peace and Justice Center. Discussion number 2 will be moderated by my good friend Pedro Silva and will be an interfaith discussion on peace. And then beginning at 3, the Peace Fair. And 45 organizations will have tables at our Peace Fair. And you'll have the opportunity to see what a lot of other great folks are doing in this community. And that just gives me goosebumps. I don't know about you. That's wow, to have that opportunity to network with that many folks. So, and then on Thursday, 9/26 at CU, Dr. Michael English, who heads up, I always forget the precise terminology, but basically their Peace Studies program at CU will moderate a panel that includes our own Dr. Jim Adams, Ambassador Todd Chapman, Brigadier General Tracy Cooker Murphy, and Pamela Simmons with the Peace Corps. And then the closing keynote will be at 4:30 with Dr. Rich Rubenstein. So we've got, there's more coming for Peace Week. Boulder Builds Peace. Thank you for being a part of it, and thanks for supporting us in doing this. And thanks especially to my friend Jim, who has been the coordinator and ringmaster of this, of what I'm sure at times he would have thought of, boy, what a circus. But wow, thank you, Jim. What a great job.